Have you ever caught yourself thinking, I did everything right. So why did she walk away? You were respectful. You gave her space. You even followed that golden advice. Just be yourself. But somehow it still didn't work. She drifted, ghosted, or slowly lost interest. And now you're left replaying every word, every moment, wondering what went wrong. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. In fact, that's where most men start. Not because they're broken, but because they've been taught the wrong game. See, society has been feeding us a script that's, well, outdated. Be nice, be available, be endlessly supportive, no matter what. And while none of those things are bad, they're not the full story. They don't explain attraction. They don't explain emotional gravity. Because here's the truth most people don't want to say out loud. Women aren't drawn to logic. They're drawn to energy, emotion, presence, and sometimes not even they understand why they're pulled toward a man. Attraction isn't a checklist, it's a feeling, a vibe, a spark that lives between the words, not just in them. Now before we go any further, let's set the record straight. This isn't about manipulation. This isn't about tricking women or playing mind games. This is about understanding the unspoken side of attraction, the part no one teaches you in school or even in most dating advice. In this video, we're breaking open something deep, something that could shift the way you see connection forever. I'm going to walk you through 10 hidden psychological weaknesses, and I don't say that with judgment. These are human tendencies, emotional patterns that exist beneath the surface, and once you understand them, you stop chasing, you stop overgiving, and you start showing up in a way that's magnetic, not because you're trying to impress her, but because you finally understand what actually matters. Let me ask you something. Have you ever met a guy who doesn't seem to try, yet women are drawn to him anyway? He's not the best looking. He doesn't have the flashiest car or the biggest following. But he moves through the world like he knows who he is. He doesn't explain himself. He doesn't try to win people. He simply is. That's not magic. That's not luck. That's understanding and embodying emotional dynamics most men ignore. Because here's what you need to know. Most women are not attracted to who you are on paper. They're attracted to how they feel around you. And what they feel isn't always about what you say. It's about your presence, your energy, and the space you hold. This video is for the man who's ready to stop guessing. The man who's tired of thinking he's not enough when in truth, he's just been aiming at the wrong target. The man who wants to connect with women deeply, without sacrificing his self-respect or pretending to be someone he's not. And if that's you, then you're in the right place. Because by the end of this video, you're going to understand why being nice isn't enough, why trying harder often backfires, and how shifting your focus from chasing to choosing changes the game entirely. So, take a breath. Let go of what you thought you knew, and open the door to something deeper than strategy-awareness. Now, before we dive into these 10 traits, I want to know, where are you tuning in from? Drop your city or state in the comments below. I'd love to know who's watching. And if you've ever felt like you've been doing everything right and still being overlooked, this one's for you. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next. Because once you start to see what's really happening beneath the surface, you won't date the same way again. Let's be honest. Women today have no shortage of options. They've got DMs flooded with compliments, dating apps offering a never-ending stream of matches, strangers making small talk in coffee shops, and social media likes that never stop rolling in. And yet, despite all that noise, all that attention, do you know what most women rarely find? Consistency. That might not sound sexy. It doesn't come with a flashy car, six-pack abs, or clever pickup lines. But in a dating culture full of flaky men and broken promises, a man who simply shows up consistently is rare. And rare is attractive. Here's the brutal truth most guys don't want to hear. Most men today are quick to start, but even quicker to disappear. They'll make plans, then ghost. Say, "I'll call you later," and forget. Promise something small, then shrug it off like it didn't matter. But it does matter. Because she's watching. Not just your words, but whether your actions match them. She's asking, silently, "Can I trust this? Can I lean into this, or is he like the rest?" That's why being steadfast isn't just a nice guy trait, it's a power move. Because in a world of shaky foundations, you become a rock. Now let's define what being steadfast really means. It's not about being rigid, boring, or overly predictable. It's about being dependable, rooted, intentional. It means if you say you'll call at 8, you call at 8, not 8:15, not tomorrow. It means when you say, "I'm here for you." It's not just when things are fun and easy, but especially when they're not. Women aren't just looking for charm. They're looking for safety. Not just physical safety, but emotional stability. A steady man makes her nervous system relax. She doesn't have to second-guess your motives or decode your signals. She feels the strength in your follow through. Now, I get it. Life gets busy. We're human. But think about this. If you can't stay consistent with the small things, how will she believe you when you talk about building a future? Being steadfast is a reflection of how you treat yourself, not just her. Do you follow through on your own goals? Do you finish what you start? When you're consistent in your own life, your habits, your word, your commitments, it naturally overflows into how you show up for others. That's why this isn't just about women. It's about who you are when no one's watching. The man who says what he means and means what he says, that man walks into any room with quiet authority. Don't have to shout. You don't have to chase. Your presence speaks because your pattern is reliable. Here's something worth remembering. You don't have to be perfect to be consistent. You just have to keep showing up. Start small. If you say you'll text her after work, text her. If you make plans for Friday, show up. And if life gets in the way, don't vanish. Communicate. Be real. Because it's not about never slipping. It's about how you handle the slip. Now let me ask you, in the last month, how many promises have you broken, not to others, but to yourself? To wake up early, to hit the gym, to stay focused on your goals. If you want to be the kind of man women trust, you have to start by trusting yourself. Your word has to matter in your own life first. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." And maybe, just maybe, that starts with being the man who does what he says he'll do, over time, through distractions, despite temptations, because consistency builds trust. And trust? That's the foundation of attraction. Most people never even talk about . So if you're tired of being seen as replaceable, stop being forgettable. Become the exception in a world full of contradictions. Be steadfast. And watch her lean into your presence, not because you chased her, but because she finally felt safe to stop running. Let's cut straight to it. Confidence isn't loud. It's not about walking into a room like you own it. It's not about flexing your success or dominating a conversation. That's not confidence, that's theater. And deep down, most people can tell the difference. Real confidence is quiet. It's not performative. It doesn't need applause. It just is. You see, we live in a world where men are constantly told to prove themselves, make more money, get more likes, show her why you're the right pick. But here's the thing. The man who knows he's enough doesn't need to prove anything. That's the kind of energy women are drawn to, not because it's aggressive, but because it's rare. Especially in a time where so many men rely on external validation to feel valuable, a good job, a perfect physique, a fancy car. But what happens when those things are gone? Confidence built on things that can be taken away will be taken down. That's not real strength. That's a house of cards. Real confidence, the kind that draws respect, not just attention, is built from the inside out. And it starts with a simple but powerful practice: keeping your word to yourself. Think about it. How many times have you said, "I'm gonna start working out tomorrow. I'll quit drinking. I'll stop texting her," and then you didn't follow through? Every time you break a promise to yourself, you send a message to your subconscious: "I don't trust me." But when you do the opposite, when you follow through, even on the smallest things, you begin to rebuild that trust. You begin to believe in yourself, not because of ego, but because of evidence. And that belief becomes presence. That presence? That's what she feels. It's the way you carry yourself without needing the room's approval. It's how you handle rejection without shrinking. It's the calm you keep when others are rattled. Confidence is not the absence of doubt. It's the ability to move despite it. A man who walks into a first date and isn't obsessed with whether or not she likes him, because he already knows his worth. That's attractive. A man who listens more than he speaks, because he doesn't need to dominate this space to feel secure. That's presence. Let me ask you something real. Have you ever met someone who made you feel calm without saying much at all? That's the power of embodied confidence. No effort, no show. Just grounded energy. And that energy is magnetic. Not just to women, but to anyone who values substance over style. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, "But I don't feel that kind of confidence yet, that's okay. You're not supposed to have it all figured out. Confidence isn't a personality trait. It's a skill, a discipline, a way of living. Start by doing one thing today that you've been avoiding. Wake up on time. Go to the gym even if it's only for 15 minutes. Turn your phone off and sit with your thoughts for an hour. Keep a small promise. Then do it again tomorrow. And again. Over time, you begin to develop a quiet certainty, not because the world applauded you, but because you showed up when no one was watching. And when rejection happens, because it will happen, you don't spiral. You don't turn it into a crisis of self-worth. You take the lesson, adjust your course, and keep walking. That's resilience. That's confidence. There's a Stoic quote I love from Epictetus: "No man is free who is not master of himself." Confidence begins the moment you stop outsourcing your value. You don't need her to like you to know you're worthy. You don't need a perfect outcome to keep your peace. You walk with certainty because you've earned it in private. And that makes all the difference in public. So if you've been chasing validation, through women, through work, through status, let this be your reminder. You don't need more applause. You need more alignment. Confidence doesn't shout. It doesn't chase. It simply shows up, centered. And in a world full of noise, that silence is powerful. Let's get one thing straight. Ambition isn't about money. It's not about driving a luxury car or owning a 5-bedroom home. Ambition isn't a lifestyle. It's a mindset. It's about direction, intention, forward movement. And in today's world, that mindset is rare. We live in a culture that rewards comfort. People binge distractions, scroll endlessly, complain loudly, and settle quietly. Mediocrity is disguised as self-care. Stagnation gets rebranded as accepting who I am. But let's call it what it really is: giving up. That's why a man with ambition stands out. Because he moves differently. While everyone else is coasting, he's building. While others wait for motivation, he shows up with discipline. And trust me, women feel that. Not in your words, not in your resume, but in the way you carry yourself. In the way you talk about your vision. In the way your eyes light up when you speak about something you're chasing that's bigger than you. Because here's the truth. Most guys miss. You don't need to be at the top to be attractive. You just need to be on your way. Women aren't looking for a man who has it all. They're looking for a man who's going somewhere. Someone who's planted, but not stuck. Grounded, but not stagnant. Someone who wakes up with a sense of purpose, even if it's messy. Even if it's still unfolding, let me ask you something. When was the last time you set a goal that scared you a little? Not to impress anyone, not to prove a point, but because your soul knew you were capable of more. Because that kind of hunger, that quiet fire, it's magnetic. You don't have to talk about it. You just live it. You show it in the way you protect your time, in the way you invest in your growth, in the way you say no to what distracts you because something better is pulling you forward. And look, ambition doesn't mean working 90 hours a week or launching the next billion-dollar startup. It can mean learning a new skill, starting a side project, getting in the best shape of your life, volunteering, mentoring, creating, teaching, leading. It's not about scale. It's about spirit. What are you pursuing that makes you feel more alive? What are you building that would still matter if no one ever clapped for you? Here's the catch. Too many men talk about ambition but don't show it. They say they want more, but they're stuck in loops. They plan without action. They dream without deadlines. And guess what? Women can sense that too. They can feel when a man's vision is just noise. So let your actions speak. Let your momentum do the talking. Start where you are. No one's asking for perfection, but they are waiting to feel your direction. One of my favorite Stoic ideas. Comey's from Seneca. If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. Meaning if you don't know where you're going, even good opportunities won't help you. But once you set your course, even the smallest gust can move you forward. That's the kind of energy that women notice, that people respect. Because you're not floating, you're steering. And here's something beautiful about ambition. It grounds you emotionally. When you have something that truly matters to you, you stop overreacting. You stop chasing distractions. You don't spiral when someone doesn't respond to your text, because you've already got something that fuels you. A path, a project, a purpose. So if you've ever felt like women lose interest after a while, ask yourself, did they sense that your life had momentum? Or did they sense that they were supposed to become your momentum? Because no woman wants to be your only source of direction. She wants to join a journey, not become the reason for one. When a man is building something real, something meaningful, it invites others in. Not because he begs them to follow, but because his movement makes them want to keep up. So if you're tired of feeling stuck, tired of being overlooked, tired of drifting, it's time to anchor into something that pulls you forward. Let your life have weight. Let your days have structure. Let your goals have teeth. Not for her, not for them, but for you, because ambition isn't about arriving. It's about choosing to keep walking, especially when no one's clapping yet. And that's the kind of man no one forgets. Let's get something clear from the start. When I say bad boy, I'm not talking about the emotionally reckless type. Not the guy who ghosts women for fun, plays mind games, or confuses disrespect with strength. No, what we're really talking about here is something deeper, something quieter. A kind of presence that's emotionally self-contained and deliberately mysterious. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. It's not the man who shares everything up front who gets remembered. It's the one who leaves just enough unsaid that she wonders. Most men these days are open books, too open. They over-explain their every thought. They respond instantly. They wear their hearts on their sleeves. Not out of confidence, but out of insecurity. They think full transparency equals connection. But what they're really doing is removing all the mystery. And without mystery, there's no tension. And without tension, there's no pull. Curiosity is a powerful thing. It's what keeps someone coming back. And yet, most guys give it all away in the first few conversations. They lay their cards on the table and say, "Please choose me," and what happens? She doesn't, but the man who knows how to hold back just a little, not to manipulate, but to protect his energy, he becomes the spark she can't quite figure out. Have you ever met someone and found yourself thinking about them days later? Not because of what they said, but because of what they didn't. That's the effect of mystery. That's the quiet tension created when a man doesn't feel the need to constantly explain himself. Stoicism teaches us this. Silence isn't weakness, it's discipline. You don't have to say everything. You don't have to share every emotion the moment it arises. You can let your stillness speak for you. Epictetus said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." Apply that to your emotional presence. Let her discover you slowly. Not because you're hiding anything, but because you know your worth doesn't live in how fast you're understood. This isn't about being cold. It's about being composed. And when you're composed, you become unpredictable, not in a chaotic way, but in a way that makes her lean in. She starts to notice your pauses. She watches your expressions more closely. She starts to wonder, what's he really thinking? And in that wondering, she invests. Now here's where a lot of guys mess this up. They try to act mysterious. They go silent just to appear cool. They delay responses not out of purpose, but out of fear. But women can sense that. They know when your silence is coming from insecurity instead of self-possession. True mystery isn't forced. It's just a byproduct of a man who's focused on his path. A man who isn't constantly seeking emotional validation. A man who doesn't need to be fully known by anyone in the first 5 minutes. Think of it this way. When everything about you is obvious, predictable, and immediately accessible, there's nothing left to uncover. You remove the thrill of discovery. And when she doesn't have to earn access to your inner world, she doesn't value it. But when she has to lean in, when she has to pay attention to figure you out, that's when she begins to invest emotionally. Let's take it even deeper. When you keep certain parts of yourself sacred. When you don't rush to be chosen, you preserve your self-respect. Not every thought needs to be shared. Not every emotion needs to be unpacked right away. Not every moment needs commentary. Sometimes, the most attractive thing a man can do is pause, to let her feel his stillness, to let her sit with the unknown for a moment longer. That doesn't make you manipulative. It makes you powerful. And if she walks away because you didn't overshare, because you didn't collapse your emotional boundaries in the first 3 dates, let her go. Because the woman who's meant to walk beside you, she respect the mystery, she honor your space, and she'll earn her way in slowly, patiently, with presence. So if you've been giving too much too fast, if you've been oversharing in hopes of feeling seen, maybe it's time to take a breath and let your silence do the talking. Because in a world where every man is chasing, shouting, proving, the one who stays still is the one who gets remembered. Here's something most men don't want to admit. We think that giving more will get us more attention, more time, more affection. We believe that if we're always available, always responding, always proving how serious we are, eventually she'll realize our worth. But that belief, it's quietly destroying your value. Because here's the paradox of human psychology. What is always available becomes invisible. Think about it. How often do you notice the air you breathe? You don't. It's just there. But take it away for 5 seconds, and suddenly, it's all you can think about. The same is true for your presence. When your attention is given freely, without boundaries, without pause, it stops being a gift. It becomes a given. And what becomes a given is no longer felt. Now let me be very clear. This is not about playing games. This isn't about ghosting, ignoring her to make her chase you, or punishing her emotionally. That's insecurity pretending to be strategy. What we're talking about here is intentional distance. Pulling back not out of spite, but out of purpose. Not to control her, but to regain control over yourself. Because most men don't realize this, but attention is emotional currency. And the more you spend it freely, without discretion, the less it's worth. A man who gives away all his energy at the first sign of interest. Who cancels his plans the moment she texts. Who bends over backwards to stay connected. That man slowly teaches her one thing. My time is yours, whether you've earned it or not. And let's be honest, how often does that? And well, now compare that to a man who's centered in his purpose. He's not rude. He's not cold. But his attention is focused, measured, selective. And because of that, his presence carries weight. When he speaks, it's felt. When he responds, it's intentional. And when he's silent, it's noticed. That silence, by the way, it's not emptiness, it's space. And space is where value is born. When you step back genuinely, calmly, not as a tactic but as a reset, she begins to feel something most men never let her feel. Your absence. And that absence invites a question. Why isn't he chasing? Did I take his attention for granted? Was I too comfortable? In that space, she leans in not because you pushed her away, but because she wants to feel that attention again. Now that it's no longer guaranteed, Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. The point isn't to control her. The point is to stop giving control away. To stop defining your value based on how often she texts back, or whether she likes you enough today. Because here's the truth. When a woman knows she can have your time anytime, she doesn't respect it. But when she has to earn it, when she sees that you protect your peace, that you're not just available for free, she values it. She respects it. And she starts showing up differently. Now maybe you're thinking, but isn't that cold? Shouldn't I be loving, consistent? Yes, be loving. Be present. Be kind. But don't be constant without consciousness. Your presence should be powerful, not passive. Let your attention become something of value again. Pull back when you feel you're overextending. Not to punish but to preserve, because the man who moves with quiet intention, who chooses where to invest, who doesn't rush to explain his silence or beg for understanding, that man commands respect. He's not chasing. He's choosing. He's no longer the man hoping to be noticed. He becomes the man whose absence is . So ask yourself this. Are you giving your energy to someone who's earning it? Or are you spending it hoping they'll finally see your worth? Because the right woman, she won't be confused by your boundaries. She'll feel the weight of your presence and the lesson of your distance. So if you've been texting too much, explaining too often, giving too freely, let this be your moment to pause, to breathe, to move with power instead of panic. Because sometimes the most attractive thing a man can do is simply stop chasing. Let's talk about a quiet truth in attraction. Women are more drawn to men who are already respected, admired, or desired by others. And no, this isn't about being a player or racking up a list of conquests. This is about social proof. And whether we like it or not, it plays a massive role in how people, especially women, perceive value. It's a simple principle. People want what others already value. And this doesn't just apply to relationships, it's human nature. If you walk past two restaurants and one is full while the other is empty, which one are you more curious about? You don't even need to read the reviews. Your instincts tell you, if other people want this, maybe there's something I'm missing. Now apply that same psychology to attraction. A woman sees a man who is well respected, confident, and surrounded by positive energy. Maybe other women speak highly of him. Maybe he's naturally at ease in social spaces. Maybe women feel safe, challenged, or even inspired around him. That doesn't make him off limits, it makes him interesting. Because now she's not just asking, do I like him? She's wondering, what do they see in him that I haven't noticed yet? And the most powerful part of pre-selection? It's never about bragging. It's never about showing off or name-dropping exes to prove you're wanted. In fact, the moment you start talking about how desired you are, the effect disappears. True pre-selection is sensed, not spoken. It's in your demeanor, your ease around women, your ability to engage without over-trying. It's in how other women respond to you subtly, naturally, without you chasing them. Now let me pause here and ask you something. Have you ever been around a guy who didn't say much, but people just seemed to respond to him? Women laughed more in his presence. They leaned in a little closer. There was a familiarity, even admiration in their tone. He wasn't the loudest. He wasn't even the best looking. But something about him just pulled people in. That's pre-selection in action. And it usually comes down to energy. Because here's what most men get wrong. They think they need to prove their value to women. But the truth is, your value is revealed by how others respond to you when you're not trying to prove anything at all. A man who is already respected by others, especially by other women, moves differently. He's not chasing attention. He's not overcompensating. He knows his worth. And because of that, he lets others speak for him. And the ironic thing? You don't even need to be in a relationship to activate this energy. You just need to be the kind of man who naturally earns respect through purpose, through presence, through consistency. Be someone women admire, not just because of how you look, but because of how you lead, how you hold space, how you stay grounded when others are reactive, how you treat people when no one's watching, because that kind of reputation, it spreads without you having to say a word. Let's ground this in Stoicism for a moment. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." Same goes for value. Don't explain why you're desirable. Don't convince. Don't sell. Just live with such purpose and discipline that women feel something when they're around you, even if they can't put it into words. Now here's a little twist. When a woman sees that you've been admired by others, but you're still selective, still discerning, still holding your own standard, that triggers something deep. Because it tells her, he's not trying to be chosen, he's deciding who fits into his life. And that, right there, is rare. Most men are scrambling for approval. You're evaluating, not performing. You're observing, not impressing. So, if you've been thinking, how do I get her attention? Flip the question. Ask instead, am I living in a way that naturally attracts it? Am I becoming the kind of man that people, especially women, want to be around without having to chase them down? Because once you become that man, you don't have to shout to be seen. You don't have to beg to be respected. You move in silence, and people take notice. That's pre-selection. It's quiet, it's earned, and it's incredibly powerful. Let's talk about something most men misunderstand. Masculinity isn't volume. It isn't being the loudest voice in the room or the one with the strongest opinions. It's not about barking orders, puffing your chest, or being emotionally distant. Real masculinity, true masculinity, is the exact opposite. It's calm, it's quiet, it's composed under pressure. And most of all, it's built on something most men avoid: emotional strength. We live in a culture where emotional chaos is normal. Outrage is rewarded. Reactiveness is everywhere. And in the middle of all that noise, something becomes unmistakably attractive. A man who doesn't flinch. He doesn't react to every provocation. He doesn't chase approval. He doesn't collapse when things don't go his way. He feels everything, but doesn't let those feelings control him. That's emotional sovereignty. And that's what women deeply crave, whether they can name it or not. Because here's the truth. Women don't want men who feel nothing. They want men who feel fully but lead themselves through it. Let me paint a picture. You're in an argument. She's emotional, tense. Most men either shut down or explode. But you breathe. You hold the space. You respond instead of react. And that moment, it builds more trust than any bouquet of roses or string of compliments ever could. Because now, She knows she's safe. Not just physically, but emotionally. Safe to be real. Safe to be messy. Because she senses that you can handle it without needing to control it. Let's pause here. Ask yourself, when was the last time you let your emotions lead your tone? The last time anger, fear, or insecurity drove your decisions? We've all been there. That doesn't make you weak, it makes you aware. And that awareness? That's your starting point. Because masculinity isn't about pretending nothing hurts. It's about knowing what hurts and staying grounded anyway. It's about feeling heartbreak and not begging. Facing disappointment and not crumbling. Hearing rejection and still walking forward with dignity. That kind of man? He's rare, and rare is unforgettable. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Think about that. Not power over her. Not power over outcomes. Power over your own reactions. That's where real leadership begins. Not with force, but with presence. Not by demanding control, but by showing you already have it over yourself. Here's the thing. When a man is emotionally weak, it puts pressure on the relationship. She feels she has to manage your moods, walk on eggshells, regulate your storms. And that burden? It kills intimacy faster than anything. But when you're steady, when you've done the work to regulate your own inner world, she finally exhales. She doesn't have to perform anymore. She doesn't have to protect herself every second. Because now, there's structure in your energy. There's safety in your frame. And that doesn't just change how she sees you, it changes how she shows up. So many men are chasing intensity, big gestures, fast emotions, but the truth? Attraction isn't built in intensity, it's built in consistency. And consistency is only possible when you lead yourself before trying to lead anyone else. Let me ask you something deeper. If your life was a storm, would you trust yourself to steer the ship? Because women can feel that answer without you saying a word. They feel it in how you speak, how you move, how you pause. And that pause? That's where the masculine edge lives. Not in domination, not in chaos, but in stillness, in clarity, in control, not of her, but of you. So if you've ever been told that masculinity means being tough, detached, unshakable, let that go. True masculinity is emotional depth without emotional dependence. It's being a man with a full heart and a steady hand. A man who doesn't flee from pain, but doesn't live in it either. Because in the end, the man she trusts, the man she follows, the man she desires, isn't the loudest. He's the one who feels the storm and walks through it anyway. Let's get this straight from the beginning. Leadership is not control. It's not about dominating conversations, barking orders, or acting like you're the alpha in the room. That's not strength, it's insecurity in disguise. True leadership, the pakapas kind that moves people, inspires women, and builds real respect, is quiet. It's rooted in presence, not performance. It's about knowing who you are and walking that truth with clarity. And women? They don't follow because you tell them to. They follow because you move with purpose, because your direction feels grounded, because your energy says, I know where I'm going, and I'm going there with or without applause. Let's pause for a second. Think of someone in your life who leads well. Maybe it's a coach, a boss, a friend, a mentor. What made them compelling? It wasn't that they were the loudest. It was that they made you feel safe in uncertainty. They made you want to trust their direction even when things got hard. That's charismatic leadership. It's not showy. It's not aggressive. It's calm, composed, intentional. A charismatic man doesn't need to push people to follow him. He makes the path so clear, so meaningful, so aligned, that others want to walk beside him. Especially women. Because here's something not talked about enough. Women don't follow ambition alone. They follow stability, vision, integrity. A man who not only sees the road ahead, but carries himself like he belongs on it. He doesn't flinch when plans change. He doesn't panic in conflict. And he certainly doesn't beg for validation. To prove he's capable. When things go wrong, and they will, he doesn't blame. He takes responsibility. He learns, he adjusts. And because of that, others, especially the woman in his life, start to trust his leadership more than his promises. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That's it. That's the entire blueprint. Leadership doesn't begin when someone gives you permission. It begins when you take ownership of your values and start living by them. And here's the thing. Leadership shows up in small, everyday choices. It's the way you handle a disagreement. The way you plan a date instead of waiting for her to decide everything. The way you speak with clarity, not confusion. Not because you're trying to control her, but because you have direction. Direction doesn't mean rigidity. It means clarity. And clarity is rare. So ask yourself, do you know where you're going? Not just in your career or your finances, but in your identity, your vision, your values. Do you know what kind of life you're building, and who fits into that picture? Because when you do, it becomes magnetic. Not because you're convincing anyone, but because you're already walking the talk. Now here's where a lot of men struggle. They think if a woman challenges them, it means their leadership is being rejected. But in reality, she's testing it. She wants to know if your composure is real. If your direction holds under pressure. If you're leading from ego or from conviction. And the man who can stay present without getting reactive. The man who doesn't fold the moment he's questioned. That man earns respect. Not because he demands it, but because he embodies it. Here's the truth. Leadership isn't something you declare. It's something you practice. You set the emotional tone of the room. You choose calm over chaos. You know when to speak and when to stay silent. You don't chase after followers. You create a path that naturally invites them. And if she sees that you don't need her to complete your vision, but you'd welcome her beside you, that's when she leans in. Not out of submission, but because your leadership gives her space to rise. So if you've been asking, how do I get her to trust me? Stop asking. Start leading. Not by force, not by pressure, but by example. Be the man who's already walking the path, who's already living his truth. And watch how quickly the right woman recognizes that direction and chooses to walk with you, not because she has to, but because she wants to. That's charismatic leadership. And it never has to raise its voice to be felt. Here's a quiet truth that most people overlook. Everyone can talk. Very few know how to connect. We're surrounded by conversations, texts, DMs, voice notes, social media posts. Words are everywhere, but connection? Connection is rare. That's why emotional intelligence (EQ) is such a powerful and attractive trait, especially in a world that rewards instant reactions over thoughtful reflection, where people hear but don't really listen, where most men respond with ego, not empathy. But the man with emotional intelligence? He operates on another level. He listens deeper. He sees between the lines. He feels the room without being told what's wrong. And you know what happens when a woman meets a man like that? She exhales. She drops her guard, maybe for the first time in years. Because emotional intelligence creates something that no looks or money ever could. Emotional safety. That's what women are craving. Not just chemistry, not just conversation, but someone who can meet them where they are, without judgment, without fear, and without trying to fix everything the second it gets uncomfortable. Let me give you an example. Say she's having a bad day. She's overwhelmed, emotional. Most men immediately go into solution mode. Just do this. You're overthinking. You shouldn't feel that way. But a man with high EQ, He doesn't rush to fix. He sits in the moment. He says, "That sounds really heavy. I'm here." He doesn't get defensive. He doesn't panic. He doesn't take her emotion as a threat. Because he's learned how to hold space, not just physically, but emotionally. That's presence. That's depth. That's connection. Now, let's flip it. You're the one feeling off. Maybe you're frustrated. Maybe you're disappointed. The emotionally intelligent man doesn't lash out. He doesn't shut down. He doesn't dump all his unprocessed feelings onto someone else. Instead, he pauses, reflects, chooses his words. Not because he's being fake, but because he's being responsible. He knows that not every feeling needs to be voiced immediately, that sometimes the strongest move is a moment of silence. Seneca once said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." That adversity, it's not always external. Sometimes it's emotional, internal, private. And it's in those moments when emotions swell and discomfort rises where your EQ is tested. Will you react or respond? Will you defend or reflect? Because here's the truth. Women don't fall for perfection. They fall for presence, for consistency, for men who can weather emotional storms without becoming one. That's the kind of man she remembers. The one who doesn't shame her for feeling too much. The one who doesn't disappear when things get heavy. The one who can say, "I see you," without needing to fix her. But here's the trap many men fall into. They think being emotionally intelligent means being passive, letting everything slide, always agreeing. Being endlessly patient. That's not emotional intelligence. That's emotional submission. A truly emotionally intelligent man, he has boundaries. He knows when to say no. He knows how to hold space for someone else without abandoning himself. He's calm, not soft. Grounded, not reactive. And that balance, that steady center, that's what builds trust. Because now she knows. She doesn't have to tiptoe. She doesn't have to perform. She can just be. Let me ask you this. When's the last time you truly listened to someone? Not just to respond, but to understand. When's the last time you made someone feel seen, without needing to turn the moment back to yourself? Because if you want to stand out, not just as a man, but as a human being, start with emotional presence. Start with self-awareness. Start with the kind of stillness that calms the chaos instead of adding to it. Because in the end, people don't remember what you said. They remember how you made them feel. And when a woman feels safe around you, truly safe, you become unforgettable. Not because you dazzled her, but because you made her feel something that most men can't even reach. Emotional gravity. So if you're tired of surface-level conversations, if you're tired of being told, you're nice, but if you're ready for deeper bonds, richer relationships, and real connection, start with this truth. High emotional intelligence isn't just attractive. It's magnetic. It's what separates the noise from the man she never forgets. Let me ask you something real. What would your life look like if no one was watching? If there were no likes, no validation, no applause, would you still be doing what you're doing? Because here's the truth most men don't realize. The most magnetic men aren't the ones chasing attention. They're the ones chasing purpose. They're not obsessed with how they're perceived. They're too busy building something that actually matters. And that, right there, is what pulls people in. Especially women. See, in a world full of drifting men, guys just going through the motions. Man with passion stands out like fire in the cold. Not because he's flashy. Not because he talks louder. But because his life has weight. It has structure, intention, meaning beyond romance, beyond dating, beyond anyone else's approval. And that kind of man, he doesn't just attract women, he attracts the right kind of women. The ones who see his direction and don't want to derail it. They want to be part of it. But here's the catch. Passion can't be performative. It can't be what sounds cool or what looks good on Instagram. It has to be real. It has to be yours. Maybe it's art. Maybe it's building a business. Maybe it's martial arts, writing, cooking, mentoring, creating, teaching, restoring old cars. It doesn't matter what it is. What matters is this: would you still do it if no one clapped? Because when you live for something deeper than attention, you become the kind of man who no longer needs it. And ironically, that's when it starts to show up. Think about the men you respect really admire. They're not constantly explaining themselves. They're not asking, "Do you like me?" They're locked into something, a mission, a project, a purpose that gives shape to their time, their energy, and their life. And when a woman meets a man like that, she can feel it. She feels that he's not going to lose himself in her. He's not expecting her to give him meaning. She's stepping into a life that already has it. That's why passion is so attractive. It creates emotional independence. You stop asking someone else to be your why. You become it. Seneca said, "If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable." In other words, if you don't have a direction, it doesn't matter how good the opportunity is. You'll drift, you'll doubt. You'll start relying on someone else to give you a sense of worth. And that's when things fall apart. But when you know your port, when you're guided by something bigger than momentary emotion, that's when everything shifts. You become more grounded, more focused, more emotionally stable, because you have something to return to when life gets chaotic. Heartbreak doesn't destroy you. It redirects you. Rejection doesn't unmake you. It sharpens you. Loneliness doesn't define you. It gives you space to build. And the right woman, she won't be intimidated by your focus. She'll be drawn to it. Not because she wants to compete with your mission, but because she wants to respect it, to add to it, to grow alongside it. That's the kind of partnership that lasts. Not two people filling holes in each other, but two complete individuals moving in alignment. So if you've ever asked, why do I keep attracting the wrong people? Maybe the answer isn't to date harder. Maybe it's to live deeper. Find your passion, even if it's small right now. Even if no one understands it yet. Even if it doesn't make money. Make space for it. Give it time. Let it shape you. Because passion isn't just a hobby. It's proof that your life means something, even when no one's watching. And that kind of proof, that kind of energy, is something you can't fake, and you can't ignore. So if you want to be the kind of man women remember, the kind they respect and admire, not just desire, don't chase more attention. Chase more alignment. Let your life be so full of meaning that anyone who walks into it feels lucky just to be part of it. That's how purpose makes you magnetic. Not by pulling people in with charm, but by pulling them in with gravity. So now you've heard it. 10 traits, 10 truths, 10 ways to stop chasing and start attracting. But before you click away, let me leave you with this. Don't try to perform these traits. Become them. Confidence isn't something you act out. It's something you earn when you keep your word to yourself. Ambition isn't about hustle quotes and late nights. It's about building something that means something to you. And presence? That magnetic force that draws people in? It doesn't come from proving yourself. It comes from knowing yourself. In a world obsessed with image, with performing masculinity, with faking depth for likes, you stand out when you stop pretending. You become powerful when you decide to build from the inside out. No shortcuts, no hacks, no noise. Just quiet, disciplined work on who you are and how you move. Pick one trait, just one. Maybe it's emotional resilience. Maybe it's mystery. Maybe it's learning how to lead without force. Don't try to master all 10 overnight. That's not how this works. Instead, live one of them, really live it, not to get the girl, not to prove a point, but because you respect the man you're becoming too much to fake it. Here's the thing, most men want change. But they want it without the discomfort. They want confidence without the failures that build it. They want strength without the solitude that forges it. They want leadership without the pressure of being the one who chooses clarity over chaos. But becoming magnetic isn't about impressing others. It's about becoming someone you respect when no one's watching. Someone you're proud to carry through the world. Because once you become that man, the kind of man who stands firm when it's easier to fold, who moves intentionally when others are drifting, who speaks with weight because he's quieted the noise inside, you no longer have to chase connection. You draw it, not by demand, but by direction. Seneca wrote, "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity." Your preparation is who you become in the moments that feel invisible, when no one is praising you, when no one is looking, when the world tells you to perform, but you choose to be instead. That's the man who lasts. That's the man who leaves an impression. So, if any part of this video hit something real inside you, not just the ideas, but the energy, then this is your next step. Don't scroll past it. Live it. Choose the harder road. Choose the silence when it's easier to explain. Choose the action when it's easier to promise. Choose to be a man who doesn't need to be understood to stay grounded. Because in a world full of performances, realness is rebellion. And becoming is always more powerful than pretending. And hey, if this message stirred something in you, if you're tired of surface-level advice and ready for something deeper, subscribe. Not because I want followers, but because this channel is built for men like you. Men who are done playing a part and ready to start leading their own story. We've got more coming. Real talk, timeless wisdom, modern strategy, all rooted in becoming the kind of man who no longer chases attention, because he knows he already is the source of it. I'll see you in the next one.